grade. We watched videos and filled out worksheets with my teacher. We mostly talked about human anatomy, and it was not until the very last minute that we actually said how a baby was made. And then we never talked about it again. I went to a Catholic middle school, so of course we learned about abstinence mostly. But when I got to high school, I found that I did not learn any more about sex than I had in middle school. I really had no idea about sex, and maybe that makes me naive, but it was never something I could talk about at home. I had so many questions, and I did not know where to go to get them answered. Almost every parent worries about having the talk with their children. It is uncomfortable for both parent and child. Today, many parents rely on the education system to teach their children about sex. But are the parents really sure of what their kids are being taught? Many sexual education classes differ on subject material. For instance, many schools just teach abstinence until marriage courses. But as more and more adolescents become sexually active, we must ask ourselves, is this method really working? Many teens have questions about sex that are not being addressed in their sexual education courses. We need to have a broader curriculum for sexual education that will answer all the questions adolescents may have. The issue of sexual education has become a growing problem. According to Amy Shalett, a sociology professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, young people account for approximately half of the 20 million STIs contracted annually. More teens are engaging in sexual activity than ever before. In addition to that, despite decline in adolescent pregnancy and teen births, U.S. teen rates remain the highest among developed nations, Gillette says. This huge number calls for a solution. So, in order to make these numbers smaller, abstinence-only courses were instated in schools on the belief that abstinence is the only 100% guarantee to prevent pregnancy and disease. I have this video to show you some facts.
One of the highest teenage birth rates of all developed nations, around 30 teen births per thousand. Many believe that this high rate has to do with their more repressive views toward teen sex. In southern states especially, they teach abstinence-only sexual education, which leaves out key details about pregnancy and diseases. United Nations reports have noted that this kind of education can backfire and contribute to more risky sexual behavior. The U.S. also has a generally more negative attitude toward sex, highlighting the dangers and the risks associated with it instead of the benefits of a healthy, intimate relationship. So,
Sharon Lerner, a senior fellow at the Center for New York City Affairs at the New School, defines abstinence-only courses teaching that sex before marriage is dangerous both physically and mentally. These courses also carefully leave out information about contraception, abortion, and homosexuality. Abstinence-only courses are leaving out important information for those students who do engage in sexual activity. And when a student does ask a question about birth control, the teacher is only supposed to talk about how inconvenient it is and how it's not reliable. This causes teens to go to other sources for this information. So here I have this kind of political cartoon, and it says that sex education will be taught on the playground. And to me, this means like they're not going to teach it in the schools anymore. They're not going to show you what it's really about. You're going to learn it from your friends or learn it from social media, and that's not necessarily the right information you should be getting. There's a lot of things that can be misconstrued that way. Because of these gaps in abstinence-only curriculum, Jennifer Wegman at the Department of Health and Wellness Studies at Bingham University in New York found that teenage girls turned to popular magazines like 17 to learn more about sex. She even found that the writers of these magazines answered questions more openly than some schools. Abstinence-only courses will admit whatever they feel does not fit or does not follow their views on how teens should look at sex. And even after extreme testing, abstinence-only curriculum has failed to show any kind of efficiency with teen pregnancy. But opponents of a broader sexual health course still argue that teaching teens about sex will encourage them to participate in sexual activity. There's no way to actually stop teens from having sex, but we can make them more educated about it. Once we realize that there's no way to actually stop teens from having sex altogether, we can now begin to formulate a more comprehensive curriculum for sexual education. In order to really combat teen pregnancy and diseases, we need to develop a curriculum that can teach adolescents what actually happens during sex. These courses should include a wide range of viewpoints and populations without stigmatizing any group. So this would include homosexuality, this would include transgender, all kinds of things that every person in the class feels like it's related to them. This type of education will make teens more comfortable when learning about sex. It would also provide them with a safe space to have any questions they have about sex answered in an honest manner. When talking about sex, honesty is the best policy. We must provide teens with accurate and complete information. If we provide our youth with the right information, we can help them make educated decisions about their sex lives so that they can live the healthiest and happiest lives possible. Differing sexual education courses has made sex confusing for teens. But if we accept a new type of curriculum, it will help teens make good choices about sex. A new curriculum will be able to answer questions teens may be afraid to ask at home. Talking about sex may always be uncomfortable, but is not something that should be ignored. I strongly encourage you to just start talking openly about sex with your kids, peers, or partner. If your child has a question about sex, do not brush it off and tell them a half-truth like, we'll talk about it when you're older, or you don't need to worry about that right now. Because if they're asking, then they want to know something's happening, so you should tell them. Because if you don't tell them, this will cause them to go to other places for the information. I know personally that I would rather have my kids come to me and tell me that they're doing something so that I can make sure that they're safe, they're protected, whatever it may be, and I don't want them to be afraid. We need to move away from this negative connotation of sex. We need to have open conversations so that the right information is out there. Thank you.